machine learning, blockchain technology, right? Natural language processing. So all of these things, as those capabilities expand, so does that skill gap. It gets larger, right? So we're going to be talking about broadening your applicant pool, how we can look at strategies to pull people into your applicant base. And so with me here, I have three fantastic panelists. They're all SMEs in workforce development. And so we're going to have about 30 minutes to start discussing, 10 minutes for questions in the end. I want to hear from you. So please stand up. I'll come over with the mic. So why don't we start with Mark? Please let us know who you are, where we can find you, all that good stuff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Hamner. I am a senior application engineering manager at a company here in Louisville called Waystar, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Mark Hamner, I would urge you to connect with me.
Hello. My name is Maribeth Martin, and I am the Chief People Officer and also the President of Interapp Skills. We're a technology services company here in Louisville, Kentucky. I like to describe ourselves as a tech talent incubator, specifically for diverse or underrepresented talent. I come to you today with a lens not only of we'll say HR, but also talent acquisition. But I also come to you with a lens and a passion for really diversifying our own talent pipeline and pools. I'm excited to see you guys today. You can find me as well on LinkedIn. Again, my name is Maribeth Martin.
Hi, I'm Stacy Griggs. I'm CEO of a company here in town called El Toro. We're one of the fastest growing advanced analytics and ad tech companies in the world. We've been here for 10 years and love our home in Louisville, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Stacy Griggs.
Awesome. And I forgot to introduce myself. I am Taisha Men. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion leader at Humana, specifically focused on diverse talent strategy. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. So we're going to start with our first question. When we talk about broadening your applicant pool, why should we broaden our applicant pool? So let's start with the why, and we can get into the nuts and bolts of the conversation. So Mark, you're closest to me. Why don't you go first?
Sure. So when I think of broadening and diversifying our application pool, there are two things that really come to mind. First of all, it's just the right thing to do, right? For too long, there haven't been the opportunities out there that should be there for underrepresented groups, especially in IT. So I believe there's a moral imperative to do it. And second of all, just from a pure business standpoint, study after study have shown that when you create an inclusive, welcoming, happy work environment where people can feel seen and work with others who have shared life experiences, it leads to better productivity. People want to come to work. People want to do a good job. So even beyond the moral imperative, which is super important, it really does help the business. And it can help you think of ideas that perhaps someone like myself may not have thought of. I'll give you one quick example. We have a team member at Waystar, and I shared this story with his permission, who is blind. And I had the great privilege of having coffee with him about a week ago. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, let's chat." And having him on our team has allowed us to really see where we can get better at accessibility. It's led me to think about things that I wouldn't have thought of as a sighted person. So that's just one of many examples of how having a diverse talent pool. And clearly, when we think of diversity, we're thinking about more African American candidates, but we're also thinking about diversity of ability and things like that. So I think it's a very broad topic, and there's a lot of great benefits from it.
I love that, Mark. So there's a moral imperative and a business imperative. What about you, Maribeth?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's really important for us to recognize that if we continue to do what we've always done, we'll continue to get what we've always gotten. And one thing I hear from a lot of business leaders is we want a different type of demographic inside of our business. We need different thought diversity. But those aren't things that are just going to naturally kind of bring themselves to your doorstep. Many times you have to go out and you have to actively seek and look for what you're looking to build inside of your organization. And that requires a component of creativity, of ingenuity, and honestly being willing to try something that may or may not work, but you're not going to know until you try.
Go ahead, Stacey.
So there's and great answers. You always hate going third, but I would say there's strong ROI in having a more diverse and inclusive environment, because you look at companies that have positions that go unfilled for weeks, months, years, because they're waiting for a candidate. And there are plenty of people that would like to have that job, but you just need to look at that job a little bit more differently and open up your recruiting pool to get the right type of talent in there.
I love that. And you're absolutely right, because if we keep on doing the same thing, the system just continues to replicate, right? We're going to get the same exact results. So what I want to do is start to hear about what are your companies doing to really support and bring in non-traditional candidates. I like to call them unique candidates. How are we bringing unique candidates in the fold individually in your companies? And since Stacey, you didn't like to go last, you can go first.
So we do a lot of things. We have a fantastic. It starts, first of all, we have a fantastic internship program, and it's a very formalized program. Over half of our employees, over half of our frontline leaders started as interns with us, and because we realized the type of technology we do in Louisville, we were somewhat unique. There aren't other ad tech companies in Louisville. At the time, there weren't other advanced analytics companies in Louisville. So we realized no matter where we hired from, no matter what degree someone had, no matter what background they had, we were probably going to need to train them in our business and how we did things. So we started there, and then we said, how do we get feedstock for this program? And if you're going to have an extensive intern program, you've got to have a great group of senior and mid-level staff that can work with interns as they kind of matriculate through your ecosystem. But then we said, where do we get the feedstock? So we worked with the Future of Work program. We worked with Interapt. We worked with Code Louisville. We worked with people that learned via the Treehouse programs at the library, Software Guild, local universities. All of those became kind of the feeders for our intern program. And it's been a very interesting way to look at talent, because we'll have people that start in one role, they're slotted to go into operations, but we find that this is a person that's got a talent and proclivity for data science, or this is a person that's got a talent or proclivity for sales. So we will have people that kind of start in one area and then move across the organization, both vertically and horizontally.
I love that. Can you guys hear me? Okay, I love that, Stacey. One thing that we're doing at Interapt, which is becoming much more kind of prevalent, I think, in the workplace, is we do have a registered apprenticeship program with the Department of Labor, which is really a very, very fancy way of saying that we've got kind of the appropriate structures and sort of maturity built into welcoming junior talent. We take a very intentional focus on skills first or skills-based hiring, recognizing that really the most important component to ensuring a person's success is not necessarily the experience or the pedigree that they bring to the table, although certainly there's a time and place for that and very beneficial. But really what we have found is it's those kind of intrinsic attributes that you can't really see on a resume that sets someone apart. And I'm talking about things like grit, motivation, kind of an internal will and desire and commitment to overcome challenges, an opportunity to embrace something new, continuous growth mindset. And those are things that you can pull and extract out of a person. Takes a little bit of work, but really through conversation and building a relationship. It's not really a check the box to figure out, is this person going to be successful in my organization or not? But it really is an intentional focus and effort on figuring out how this person is naturally wired, what are their motivators, what's important to them, and then does that fit with what we're looking to build long term? And yeah, like there's not a recipe A plus B equals C. But what I have found is that, we've seen tremendous success, and it is those intrinsic characteristics that really, it's the icing on the cake.
Great response. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, these are tough acts to follow, right? But I'll mention just a few things that we're doing at Waystar in this area. One of which is our BIT 502 program. And this is a program that many of you in the room are also partners in, and thank you. So it is a 2-year apprenticeship program, which is a partnership between Waystar and 12 or more other awesome IT employers in Louisville, like I said, some of which are in the room today, that provides an alternate path into a career in information technology than your typical 4-year computer science degree. And the goal is really to open up those opportunities to underrepresented people who may not have the ability right now to go and get that 4-year degree. So the way it works is students go to school 1 day a week at Jefferson Community and Technical College, JCTC, and then they work with their sponsor employer 4 days a week. And at the end of the program, they get an associate's degree from JCTC. And because Waystar is also a registered apprenticeship with the state of Kentucky, they get a cool Department of Labor credential and certificate that, of course, we hope they're going to stay with us forever and always. But if they don't, it can really help them as they move out into the workforce. We've had a lot of great success with this. We've already onboarded full-time 2 of our apprentices from our 2021 group. So they're now full-time software engineers with us, making full-time software engineering money, which is awesome. But just to deep dive into 2 aspects of that really quick that I think are pertinent as we look at broadening our pool of applicants. The first one is that apprentices are paid. Every BIT 502 has to pay their apprentices in the agreement that we sign when we become a part of this program. So this is not the typical unpaid internship that you hear nightmares about or anything like that. And the second is that every day that they are at work with a BIT 502 employer, whether they be me or one of the other awesome sponsors, they're doing work related to the field that they're going to be in, whether that be software engineering, coding, which is what I sort of specialize in, or IT support or networking or anything like that. You're working on that. This is not like you see in the movies, where they're getting coffee or, getting lunch. This is not about that. I'm happy to have a few of my apprentices in the room. There's Clayton over there. And it's just really a great program. And the second thing I want to highlight is that JCTC, give a lot of credit to Tiffany Jones-Coleman, who's my partner there, the student success coach for BIT 502, does a great job of finding grants, scholarships, Evolve 502, the Work Ready grant, all sorts of cool things to help these students as much as possible go to school debt-free, which I think is terrific. Another thing I just briefly wanted to highlight is we're trying to go and begin younger than that as well. So we're going to local high schools. I spend a lot of my time going to high schools in JCPS and gotten to meet many of you awesome folks there, talking to the students and explaining what a career in IT is like. We've also have a partnership with Fern Creek High School. And the reason we chose Fern Creek is because their percentage of underrepresented groups was really well tracking with the demographics that we hope to make a difference with in this program. As a matter of fact, just tomorrow I'm doing an AMA, Ask Me Anything, little term I stole from Reddit, with the students in the computer pathway at Fern Creek. So that's going to be really cool. We've also partnered with the Urban League. I did their Workforce Wednesday talk yesterday, so that was a great chance to talk to some other organizations that do have a large percentage of underrepresented groups that they're partnering with. And finally, we have a cool program called Waystar Scholars, and that specifically looks for underrepresented minorities that are interested in going to JCTC. And we pay for their tuition, and we give them we give them a mentor at Waystar. I've had the great privilege of mentoring 3 of these students myself, and to give you an idea of the wide range of people we're seeing, one of my mentors was a slightly older African-American woman with military experience who I really kind of thought should have been mentoring me. And another was a young man who's an ESL student and learned a lot from him as well. And my current mentor is an amazing young African-American woman with a really strong passion for engineering, who's really loves video game coding. So it's just a really great experience. Those are just a few of the things that we're trying to do at Waystar to begin to make a difference. It's a huge problem, right? But we're trying to begin tackling it.
Do you know what I've loved the most in hearing kind of both of your responses is that like we we recognize the importance of joining forces, linking arms, and walking side by side with organizations that are committed to this, like, such important work throughout our community and, quite frankly, our country. I can tell you with 100% certainty that the success that I've seen and that Interact has achieved over the past few years would not have been possible if we tried to do this in a vacuum, right? You cannot go out and increase your talent pool. You can't diversify your workforce when you're living in a bubble. And there are lots and lots of companies and, quite frankly, communities, partnerships that if you are just willing to go and have a conversation and say, hey, listen, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help me? You will find out that they're also trying to do the same thing. And there's no harm in tapping into other pipelines of talent to bring then into your own fold. So I would encourage, like, I've seen the most success with that. The other thing that I'll flag that we haven't touched on is, when we think about traditional sort of recruitment, I think we think, LinkedIn, or we think Indeed, or co-ops go into, local universities, community colleges, but there's a huge, huge talent pipeline out there of what we would say kind of non-traditional or non-degreed talent, that, quite frankly, are so eager, have been overlooked, untapped. And you can go and you can find those folks in all sorts of places. The Urban League has been really great to interact. HBCUs have also been really great to interact, whether you're thinking alumni or even individuals that maybe have kind of entered into the university but then have since fallen out because they've had, barriers or obstacles that kept them from really continuing their education. So long story short, I would say don't try to do this by yourself, but partner with other people because you're going to have so much more success.
I love that. And Maribeth, I was about to ask, like, how do you find them? How do you attract these candidates? And she answered that question. But we can kind of talk about that. I love the fact that in one of your previous responses, you said, well, you can't put grit and perseverance on a resume, right? So at Humana, one of our values is to rethink routine. So how do we start to look at these resumes? How do we start to look at how do we pull some of these things out of the talent, right? To identify top talent. How do we do that? And so I think that these are all great ways. Let's talk about some of the contemporary best practices, right? So I know that job descriptions are a huge one. How do we attract the talent? Where do we go to find them? Stacey, why don't you talk to us about some of the best contemporary best practices that maybe you are employing to attract some of these candidates to you?
So traditionally, when you've got recruitment problems, you kind of look to HR, or lots of organizations look to HR and they kind of make it an HR problem. At El Toro, we kind of make it an executive problem and say, why aren't we able to fill this role? Is it because we're looking for the wrong person? Is it that we're looking for the wrong combination of skills? And, we've got a fantastic HR team, but it's not one of those like where we'll keep saying, why can't you do this? It's like, what are we doing wrong here if we're not able to fill a role? And by the way, I would tell you can find grit and perseverance on a resume, and I would call it a veteran. We love hiring veterans, and Dusty's shaking his head because he knows I'm going to mention Dusty was a Code Louisville graduate who started with us with retired out of the military, was a master sergeant, so high-level leadership, high-level teamwork, high-level grit and perseverance, but relatively new at coding. But he's progressed to the point where he's chief of staff for our dev team now, and so it's that combination of leadership skills from the military, but also the coding skills that he got from kind of a change of career type of program. And we partner a lot with military transition programs because I'm a veteran as well, and I know how hard it is to take that. You've been trained to do this one thing, and you've got almost a different language. Like you come out of the military, and like someone in the military will say, "Well, I need your DD 214," and like if you're in the military, you know what that is. But most civilian employers, most civilians will, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's one of those things that help people transition. That have like these great skills that did something amazing for all of us, but sometimes have transition problems.
I love that because you said you can find veterans. Same thing with moms, right? I say mom is a mother of multitasking, right? So like we know that there are those skills that you can pull out, right? Just understanding what is your background. So that's great. Maribeth, did you want to speak on that as well?
Nothing stellar comes to mind at the moment.
Yeah, no problem. Well, the thing is that, so we talked about attracting these unique candidates, right? And I think that you all spoke about how you do that individually, but we talk about ceilings, right? We know there's concrete ceilings. We know that there's glass ceilings. We don't want to create a tech ceiling, right? So we don't want to bring in these candidates, give them the skills, and really keep them right here, right? Because, okay, we taught them how to code, and now they can do SQL or they can be a BI engineer, but they kind of are stagnant. What are some ways that each of you can speak of that? How do you continue to pour into these individuals that you're bringing into your companies? How do we continue so we're not creating that tech ceiling, that they can continue to grow into the work that they're doing and really provide work in meaningful ways? Do you want to go with that, Mark? Anyone can take it.
Sure. So at Waystar, there are a few different ways we tackle this. First of all, we have a really strong belief in continuous lifelong learning. So even after you're onboarded, we have every team member gets a subscription to LinkedIn Learning, which has all sorts of cool courses in management, meeting management, professionalism. But beyond that, we've also produced over 45 what we call level up courses, which can be taken by a new person, someone who's been with the company a long time, if they want to upskill their technical talent. If you came in and now you want to learn more about database management, or you want to learn more about APIs, or you want to learn more about data, we have those available. Anyone can take them at any time. For those interested in continuing a more formal education, like I'm sure many of you do, we offer a tuition reimbursement program that speaks to me because that's how I finished my degree a million years ago, was through a program like that. And that way you can go to school, online, or at night, or even like during the day if you can work it out with your leadership, and continue your education there. And the final thing I'll mention sort of dovetails into what we talked about earlier about getting candidates in the door. It's not just about, to me, it's not just about getting them in the door and then providing them educational opportunities. It's also about providing them a sense of belonging, because we want team members who are going to stay with us long term. And again, beyond the business impact, there's a moral imperative there as well. So we have what we call affinity groups. We have an affinity group for persons of color who can meet together and share their lived experiences. We have an LGBTQ plus affinity group where people can get together and talk about topics that interest them. And there are many, many, many more. So we really try to support not only the continuing education to get them past those ceilings, but also that sense of belonging, which are going to make people feel more comfortable in going in pursuit of those leadership roles, if that's what they want, or more senior engineering roles and things like that. So.
I love that. The other thing that I would add is I think it's really important to have a mentorship program. And if your organization is not kind of mature enough where you feel like you can implement something super structured, know that you don't have to. It doesn't have to be really, really structured. It can be something as simple as when you welcome a new hire into the front door of your organization, you pair them with a buddy. You don't have a mentorship program? Okay, Maribeth is going to be your buddy. There's no question that's too silly. Feel free to ask her anything. She's going to regularly check in with you. She's going to show you the ropes, going to maybe give a little bit of insight. Oh, when you go into this meeting, you should know that Stacy doesn't like a lot of chit chat, right? So let's make sure we get to the point and then get chit chat after. Like little bitty.
I don't like a lot of chit chat.
Do you not? Okay, perfect. I'll keep that in mind. But honestly, just making sure, to Mark's point of ensuring that your team feels like there's a community, that there's inclusion, that they can bring their best authentic self to work every day. That's what we want for our teams. That's what we want for ourselves. And we're not meant to walk life alone. And I believe that it rings so true in the workplace too. So really just making sure that you've got a friendly face, a welcoming face, even before somebody walks in the front door, before they sign that offer letter. When I think about just the overall sort of candidate experience, not only how and where you find the candidates or the talent, but even, the experience that they have when they're interviewing with your company. Is there representation in that interview? Are there other people that look like them that, can relate to them? It makes just a world of difference. So I would also touch on that.
So two things. First of all, culture is really the thing that drives all of these things for any organization. And you've got to build a culture where people feel like they're important, that like what we're doing is mission aligned. You're part of that mission. You're an important part of the team. And people, if they can see that connectivity of the work that they do and how it affects the greater organization, feel much more involved in the organization. One of the things that we started doing, and like COVID actually made us do this, we realized that our communication was largely informal and we weren't awesome at doing it with predictability. So once COVID started, we started doing a weekly, what the team has started calling the Stacy the Union, where we do a weekly in-person and Zoom call, and we have all of the executives come up and talk about, hey, how was sales this week, and did we meet expectations? Are we tracking for or under quota? How are finances doing? And we have all of the corporate leaders come up and talk about what's going on, both successes and failures, so people feel like they're involved and part of the organization. On the ceiling thing, it's interesting because I was thinking about that. That's more of a like you're a big company with thousands of employees type of concept. And 10 years ago we had 5 employees. 5 years ago, we had 25 employees. Today, we've got 130 employees. So we've got an almost insatiable demand for people to rise up in the organization. Our last 3 leaders of the intern program all started as interns. So their like opening day, speech is like, I was in your seat. And you too, if you kind of follow the program, can like be teaching this program at some point. Our director of operations started as an intern with us. I mean, so we really haven't hit the point where like we have a ceiling where people cap out. We actually wish we had more people that were like stepping up in more senior roles.
Yeah, and data has showed that these non-traditional candidates or unique candidates actually stay longer, right? And so that's the thing. Sometimes we look at them and say, oh, well, there's a lot of risk involved, but absolutely not. And I think that just touching on everything that you said, what I hear is that high levels of inclusion, right, create high levels of engagement, and that promotes retention. So I love that. So I kind of want to just shift the conversation a bit and say, what advice do you have for anyone in the room here that might be a unique candidate that may have that non-traditional experience? And if they're saying, well, how do I market myself better, right? How do I really present myself so I can be that top stellar candidate? What type of advice would you have for them on maybe finding a program like this, or, what advice do you have from them on their career path?
So thinking about it from my perspective, I would urge, much like Stacy talked about earlier with the military, remember that requirements are not necessarily one-to-one, right? If you have military experience, what area of what we do in the job, whether it be leadership, whether it be project management, does that not map to? There are so many opportunities that sort of background can bring, right? Programming, think about maybe you've never written a line of code in your life, but maybe you like to solve puzzles. Maybe you like to solve problems. My VP, Larry Briggs, is fond of saying, as a programmer, your real job isn't really writing code, it's solving problems, and code is a tool that we use to do it. Maybe you've never worked formally in a customer service role in a large organization, talking to customers, going out to client sites, but maybe you've worked at Target. And maybe you've dealt with challenging customer situations and helped find solutions. All that can map, and I would urge you to highlight that mapping on your resume. And then the tired but true thing that we always hear is tailor your resumes to the jobs that you're wanting. It's a little more work, no one likes to do extra work, but I think it really does make a difference. And I would also urge you to, check out programs like Bit 502. Again, it's not just a me thing. There are so many people I see in the room who are also my partners in Bit 502. Check out some of the awesome programs that my fellow panelists have talked about. There are so many opportunities out there. And the other thing that I tell people, and this is something I say when I talk to high schools or I talk to people with the Urban League, is we don't require experience in coding or anything else for programs like Bit 502. What we really like to see is people with enthusiasm and a hunger for learning and who want to get into this field. So don't think, oh, I can't do this because I'm not super nerdy with computers, for example. If you want to do this, if I'm interviewing two candidates and one has coded, a year's worth of stuff, but it's like, I could care less. And the other one's not written a line of code in their entire life, but they have a super great attitude and they want to learn, I'm picking the second person every single time. So that's just some advice. I'm, sure my friends probably have some great advice as well.
I think for me, and I will speak from my own personal experience and kind of from my heart, is before I found myself in a position where I was in a leadership role, right? I was a senior executive in an organization. There were many times when I struggled, and quite frankly, even to this day, if I'm honest, with what we would call imposter syndrome, right? Where you feel like you want to do X, Y, and Z. You think that you can, but you're just a little bit scared to like put yourself out there because what if you fail, or what if you put yourself out there and something actually takes off and then you're not sure if you can. I think one thing that I want everyone to know is that it doesn't matter sort of what your walk in life is. If you have a dream, if you have a vision that you wish to pursue, whether you have the confidence in the moment or not, know that you are worthy. You are capable of more than you likely give yourself credit for. And very, very rarely, if you go to someone in this space and you said, like, Maribeth, can I have 30 minutes to have coffee with you? I would like to know whatever you're looking for. Most people are not going to turn you away when you ask for 30 minutes, but it's really getting that courage and finding that bravery to make the ask is so incredibly important. And again, like this is coming from, Maribeth's personal experience. I've been there. I know what that's like. The other thing that I will say is if you're, a woman that wants to get into tech, or you're, a Black woman that wants to get into tech, where there's even fewer people that look and act like you in this space, know that you don't have to find someone that looks and acts just like you to be a champion and a cheerleader for you. And many times it's folks that don't look and act like you that can really help sponsor you and push you along. So as you do get into those organizations and into these communities, make sure you find someone that is willing to speak positively about you in a room when you're not there, because that also will really help propel your career.
So I'll give you some tactical advice, especially if you ever apply at El Toro. If you write code at all and you don't have a GitHub, you're probably not going to get the job. So list your GitHub. If you have written code as part of one of the local coding programs or one of the local universities, and all that is in your GitHub is what you were required to do at school, you're probably not going to get the job. What we want to see is people that fell in love with it and tried to learn other things. Even if the code was terrible, we want to see that you tried to learn something else. We want to see that you had the desire to do something other than what you were assigned to do. We give all of our applicants a written test. And one of the things that we noticed, especially for people coming into our operations team, is that their written communication skills were terrible. I would suggest that you take time on anybody that gives you a test. I'd also suggest you use Chat GPT. It's a take-home test. You can use whatever tool you want. And like, if I gave you a math test and you decided not to use a calculator, well, that's on you. One of the people earlier was talking about, he was a professor talking about college students using Chat GPT. And if I were a professor, I would flunk any student who didn't use it. I mean, this is a productivity enhancing tool. And if you give a test that, that can be passed with Chat GPT and you didn't use it, you flunk.
Just thinking about your stories, I remember when I wanted to go into recruiting, and I said, I really want to try recruiting and become a tech recruiter. And I had an interview, and the person I recruited with, older white male, was just like, you know what, Taisha, I don't think you have this, that you can do this, right? He was just like, the majority of the people here, they're like car salesmen, they've done sales and marketing, and I didn't have that background. But keep on trying. That's my advice, right? Because oftentimes rejection is just redirection, and that's just not the place for you. So keep on trying, right? When one door closes, another one opens. Open a window, or sometimes I say bring your own tools, make your own door, right? So just keep on trying. Now, I know we have a couple minutes left. Any questions from the audience for our wonderful panelists here? Sure. Would you like me? Let me come down. I'll give you the mic.
Jack, but you got it. So I appreciate you. All right, thank you. My question, just coming from a unique vantage point for like the last 8 years, how do you balance maintaining let's paint a utopia picture real quick. Utopia, we don't even need job descriptions. You don't post on Indeed because everything's filled and you know who's coming next, right? But how do you all, well, we noticed that all these companies have a lot of postings, meaning there's probably a lot of work that needs to be performed to like really optimize your position within your company, maximize revenue. So how do you promote a culture that is high challenge, high support, that yields belonging while still building out a strong contingent labor strategy and or managed services strategy where people don't feel like they're at risk of losing their job because of the work is being outsourced, but at the same time, they need to understand that upskilling, continuing learning is very imperative so you all don't necessarily take on more of that spend in those different areas. Like, can we get very nuanced with that? Like, what's the magic pill? Who has a silver bullet?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Ooh, that is a hard question, and probably a lot of answers that could apply. I think where I would start for me inside of our organization is ensuring that the talent that you have residing within already, because we know our organizations are only as strong as the people that make up the company, right? That there is an expectation, there is a culture already built around continuous upskilling. So let's remember that when you enter an organization, you don't want to be stagnant, right? Like you always want to continue to polish yourself and continue to grow. And that's just part, like that is the part of the culture. Because one thing that I have seen as as we look to bring in additional talent, for the folks that are already there becomes like a little bit of a fear. Like, okay, well, like why do you need them? Can I not do that? I've been here for a while. And what I've found in my own experience is that you likely do have people inside of the organization that are capable, that are willing to grow, that want to see that career progression, but the time has not been invested on the front end to kind of set the expectation to help the talent build that roadmap. So instead of having, one or two very formal kind of annual reviews each year, I would encourage organizations to connect with their talent more frequently, but less formally. So that way it is a continuous sort of conversation and feedback. You're always going to want to grow your organization. Like that's what businesses do. They grow and they scale, but we don't want to leave out the people that have been part of the organization from day one.
I'll give you an example from early in my career, Joe. I was a young IT manager at the University of Pennsylvania's health system, and I'm older, so older than you. But we were getting ready to go through Y2K. It was about 2 years. It was 2000. It was 2 years before Y2K, and we were going to replace predominantly every system there. And as we replaced systems, we were going to move away from essentially tape archival. We had a group of data center operators, which is a job title that probably no longer exists. And their job was to change tapes. They would put a tape in a machine, they would take a tape out, they would write a label on it, and they would either keep it on site or they'd send it off site for storage. And that was an exceedingly boring job that paid pretty well. And when I talked to them about, hey, here's our plan to replace this technology, but by the way, we need you here, and here's our plan for you as we replace this technology, because we're going to need a lot more help on the network. And network is more challenging, but it actually pays better. But every one of you that stays and does this job, we will transition. And I did the same thing with, because we needed a bunch of like AS400 and VAX programmers. And those were, kind of COBOL. Those were languages that were already dead. And, but like I had to convince about 50 people to continue, and I know those languages are still around today, but like I had to convince about 50 people to stay in jobs that they viewed as no future, because I gave them a future after that, to talk about the upskilling. And usually upskilling creates opportunity in jobs. When you look at like ChatGPT, it's not going to some people are going to have to change jobs. But if you look at the calculator, it didn't replace mathematicians. We have more mathematicians now than when the calculator was invented. If you look at automobiles, it did replace people that like made buggy whips, but you've got more people employed in the auto